you know, you can go to the Mob Museum, and that's a great thing to go visit and observe and have fun. But I have with me here two of the original guys who were involved with, I guess, with the mob, organized crime at the time, Frank Cullotta and Henry Hill. And not only you guys have a very varied past, but you also have a very interesting present. Because now, I mean, you're involved in organized crime and getting in and out of jail and drugs and hits and things like that, and now you're authors and artists. Why the transition?
You want to answer that? Go ahead. You answer first.
Why the transition? You know, they say you can't change your life. I've literally changed my life. I mean, from being a racketeer, being in the rackets and being involved in organized crime, up until the age I was, in my 30s, I was not a nice guy.
Well, you grew up in what, New York?
Brooklyn, yeah.
Right. And you got involved in
at a very young age. Organized crime.
Right. But as a kid, you were probably in and out of trouble, I suspect.
Well, you know, not really, because I was with those people. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, and they was able to get me out of all the trouble that I had got into or was getting into, and I was working for them. You know, and I was just so intoxicated with that lifestyle as a kid. I mean, it was it was just fascinating. From from the way I was brought up, and the way my family was brought up, I was just it was unbelievable, for me as a child to see these were the role models in my neighborhood, these gangsters, and they were pretty heavy, Murder Incorporated, with Paul Vario, he was one of the 5 bosses of New York, I was just so infatuated with it that I fell right into it.
And then getting in trouble and going to prison, that didn't change you?
Not at all. I mean, in prison was back in the 70s when I went to prison in the 80s, the 60s and 70s. It was. It's not like it is today. I don't think. I haven't been in prison in a while, but. It was, for us guys, it was different than a regular prisoner. I mean, we lived on a different level than a regular prisoner. We was able to
You're in the penthouse.
Buy our way through the time, through the time. We lived pretty well in prison.
Mm-hmm. Frank, you very well known in Las Vegas. You came out of Chicago, right? You were involved in criminal activity in Chicago. You came out. Why did you come out to Las Vegas?
I was told I needed to come out there. I had watched Tony's back, Tony Spaccio. Mm-hmm. Tony and I grew up together in Chicago, and I worked for the outfit in Chicago. And Tony needed some help out here. He was starting to feel as though his life may be in danger, because there was other crews moving into the town, other outfit guys from other states. So they sent me out here to more or less watch his back. And I told Tony when I got out there, I says, you want me to bring some guys also? I need an army. He said, yeah. I said, well, how are we going to earn? I mean, you don't make paychecks. It's not like you go to a factory and you get a paycheck, So he says, well, he's got the okay. He could rob people, muscle bookmakers. He says, matter of fact, that's what I want you to do. Muscle these renegade bookmakers out there, because I want a piece of their action. Mm-hmm. He says, and they'll run to their boss, and then the boss will fill me in on the piece of their action. So that's actually what I was out there for.
But then you transitioned, you got involved in this hole-in-the-wall gang, which was...
That was part of our crew. They labeled us the hole-in-the-wall gang because we were making a lot of entries into homes and businesses by making a hole in the wall instead of... We bypassed the alarm.
Right. You could either come in through the wall or from the roof.
From the roof, yeah.
Yeah. Why did you resort to that type of crime instead of the shaking down? And why did you do the burglaries and get involved in going to people's homes?
You live in Vegas. You spend a lot of money in Vegas. You do a lot of gambling. You do a lot of partying. So, and you couldn't just do one thing all the time. I mean, how many armed robberies could you do? How many burglaries could you do? How many people could you shake down? So you just broke it up.
Isn't there enough money in the bookmaking and the drugs and the prostitution and some of the other typical kind of activities?
Yeah. I want to say one thing I left out. I did open up a restaurant in Vegas, but once the Metro found out I owned a restaurant in Vegas, they wouldn't leave us alone. I had a lot of people coming in there, bosses from casinos, and they were scared to come in there. They don't want to lose their gaming license. I even had Wayne Newton get challenged 2 times in the parking lot. And they told him, you're going into a hoodlum place. He said, I like the food. He said, I don't pay attention to people. I just like the food.
Right.
But actually, with all the heat we were getting, and we were trying to be legit, they forced me to even work harder than stealing.
Had the reverse effect.
Right. It's true.
Ultimately, both of you went into witness protection
That's right.
programs.
Yes.
You for a short period of time.
7 years, actually. It wasn't that short of a period. And
You were under a long time.
yeah.
How does that work? Take me through it. I mean, you changed your name.
A couple of times. I've had my name changed 3 different times. I can say one thing about witness protection. It worked for me at the time. It saved my life and my family's life.
Okay, so you had children at the time?
Yes.
You had, 3 children?
2 children.
2 children?
Yes.
And how old were your children at that time?
9 and 11.
Okay. Now, how do you explain to your children that, hey, we're changing where we live, changing our names and who we are, and how did the kids, keep that secret?
It was quite difficult. And I mean, there was a whole process that we had to go through. It took about a month, for us to go to a neutral site where they, retaught us how to live, under these different names. And, my kids, they were old enough to understand, what was happening.
But they were leaving their friends. They must have been very, unhappy about that.
It was horrible for them, for my family. It was horrible for them. It was quite, much easier for myself. But for them, but I could not leave them behind because God knows what would happen to them. I mean, they tried to kill my wife one time. I knew the way these people operated. I knew the way they thought. And, I knew that for them to get to me, they would go to my children or other members of my family.
Why were they after you so badly?
Why? Well, the Lufthansa, we had robbed the Lufthansa Airlines in 1978, and it was the largest cash robbery in the United States history.
Millions, right?
Yeah, $8 million in cash,
yeah.
And a couple of million in diamonds and stuff. And all of the, there was 11 people killed after the robbery by the bosses. Who, it was over greed, money. They just the bosses wanted to keep all the money when they realized how much it was, because we didn't expect that kind of money. We expected a couple of $1 million, and everybody was supposed to get a certain amount, but it was such a huge score, and then people started. Just about everybody in the city knew that. Jimmy Burke and Paul Vallejo's crew did it, and they couldn't prove it. And well, anyway, I was the last one left alive.
Last man standing.
Yes, basically, I was the last man standing.
Did you get a lot of money from that heist?
Not what I was supposed to get, no.
Right.
I got a few $100,000, but, I was promised $500,000, as was everyone else that was involved. But, like I said, the bosses, the greed took over, and they started just killing everybody.
Yeah. Both of you mentioned how greedy this business is. Did you make a lot of money?
I did.
You did?
Yeah, I made a lot of money. Spent a lot of money, made a lot of money.
Now, so you got a lot of cash, obviously, and then you have to then deal with, I assume, not filing tax returns.
Right.
Right? And did you get in trouble for that?
Well, if you don't file a tax return, they don't know what you're making.
Right.
So I never fill out no tax returns at the time, and I put the money in different businesses and stuff. Everything I had was not in my name.
Right. So did you ultimately have charges brought against you for tax evasion?
No.
No?
Never had none of them charges brought against me. It was actually, they were investigating me for murders and robberies.
I should mention, before I forget, that Henry Hill, you have this movie, Goodfellas, based upon you, I guess, to a certain extent, right? And you have this book, Gangsters and Goodfellas, Henry Hill, The Mob, Witness Protection, and Life on the Run. And Frank, your book is the life of Cullotta, the life of Chicago criminal, Las Vegas mobster, and government witness. What's it like when, how does it work when the federal government comes to you, or maybe it was local law enforcement, they came to you and engaged in that conversation about going into witness protection?
Well, if you're asking me first, they approached me while I was in the Clark County Jail, and the feds did, and he said to me, he says that there was a contract out of my life. And I looked at him and I laughed, and I says, "Bull," I said, "I know what you guys are up to." I said, "You're trying to get me to roll." I said, "That ain't gonna happen." He said, "This is our," he said, we're compelled to tell you this." I said, "All right." I still didn't believe him. So while I was in there, I made a couple calls out there, and I found out how my family was being treated by my associates. In other words, they weren't taking care of them.
Right, and you had your family at the time consisted of what?
The woman I was married to and her 2 kids,
right,
which were a boy and a girl. All right. Okay. So I was upset, and I was upset at Tony because he didn't put up the money he was supposed to put up for the process of the appeal.
But for attorney's fees and that type of thing?
Yeah, and I had paid all this money into it, and he wasn't contributing at all to any of it, making bail bonds for everybody. And I was doing this all with my own money for my partners and myself. And of course the guy was angry, and I started thinking, I seen too many guys go to jail. Your friend pat you on the back, "Hey, he's a good guy, he's a stand-up guy, right? Yeah, you're in jail doing life or you're in the grave."
Your life's ruined.
They kill you, they bring you to your own funeral, So I made that decision. I called the feds up, and he was there, the federal building for Clark County Jail is maybe 15 minutes away. I think he was there in 5 seconds. Next thing I know, he was there, and he come in, and he didn't read me my rights. He just asked me a bunch of questions. And they were trying to get around to murders. See, that's when they figured they got you locked in. You could talk about all the crooked things you've done, but murder is a big thing with them. And finally, he got to that, and I was still hesitant. Now I'm really worried. I don't know what's going on here. I'm dealing with these guys that chased me all my life. I don't really like them. So, and then I rolled. At that time, I rolled.
Did you trust them at the time?
No, I didn't trust them for a long time, and that's the most hardest part about it, as Henry will tell you. You're dealing with the people that shot you in the head, that would have put you in jail forever, right? That they're trying to just get ahead in life themselves, So I didn't trust them. But once you start trusting them, they never lied to me, and I'm sure they never lied to Henry.
Yeah, absolutely not.
They never lie to you, so you become friendly with them because you got nobody else to turn to anymore. You just got to talk to these guys. You got to rely on them. So that's what happened. I started relying on them, and they became my friends. As a matter of fact, one of his agents that lives in Las Vegas now, Dennis Arnoldy, whom is retired, is a very good friend of mine. I know him and his family.
So then you had to discuss this with your family about going into the witness protection. What was their feeling about it?
Very difficult. Very, very difficult. That's probably one of the hardest things I had to do in my life, was to make a call to first I called my family, my mother, my brother, my sister. And they couldn't believe that I was doing this. They thought had gotten tortured, into doing it. They don't know. So I told them, no. I said, it's hard to explain, I said, but there's nothing going to happen to you, because Chicago people, they don't hurt the family of the guys that rolled. They have this code, But then I had to tell my wife, and she immediately said, yes, don't worry about it, I'm with you. The kids were the difficult part.
And how old were your children at the time?
My daughter at the time, my daughter from my first marriage, really never lived with me, because when she was 6 months old, my first wife took the kid and got remarried, and they moved off. So I didn't see that daughter until she was like 18 years old. So she was not in my life at all. It was the stepkids that I tried to be their father to, And they were the difficult part to get in the program, because they were born and raised in Nevada, and all their friends were here. So eventually the boy went, and then eventually the boy went out, then eventually the girl went, then eventually the girl came to us with pregnancy, and it was a hassle with the kids. It really was a hassle, But these are her children. She's not going to leave her children for me,
Right. Now, are you allowed to contact your parents? How about your wife? I mean, is she allowed to have any contact with her family?
That's the rough part, as Henry knows. There's no pictures. You can't send pictures. You're not supposed to call. Look, it's all. You want to stay alive. These are the rules you have to follow. Mm-hmm. The marshal just tells you, do this, do that, do this. If you send pictures, if you do get a picture sent, make sure there's not a phone book there, because people see that stuff. They could read the writing on the phone book, don't know what state you're in. So you manage your own life. So it was difficult to control them, because they want to talk to their parents, their wives and kids, or their fathers and mothers. So it was really rough. Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, it was more of a problem for my family than it was for me.
Right.
I mean, believe it or not, I was relieved when I went into the witness protection program. I mean, they were going to kill my wife. They had an opportunity, they almost got her at one point. And I knew I was raised with these people all my life, from the age of 9 or 10. I knew the way they thought, the way they operated. I'd seen it done before to other people, what they would do. So I knew the capability of them. And I was very scared for my family. Yeah.
Did you have a job? I mean, you go into witness protection, you go to a different city. How do you live?
$1,500 a month subsistence. That's what I was given for 2 children and myself and my wife. It was difficult, but we survived. My wife went on to make a living, and when I could work, most of the time I could not work. I was being debriefed.
Right.
Probably 2 weeks of every month, I would be in the custody of the marshals or the U.S. Attorney's office at a neutral site or back in New York, and so I was
to maintain a job.
Yeah, I was incapable of having a job.
Do a lot of testifying?
10 cases I was involved in, 10 major cases in New York, and it was difficult. It was difficult, but it was it was a process for me to go through and to forgive myself for what I was doing. And then I finally realized that I was doing the right thing. I knew I was doing the right thing, and they asked me nothing but just to tell the truth, and that's why I wound up with 10 cases, because. They debriefed me, and they were pretty intelligent the way they knew how to debrief someone, and they'd start another case on different areas and subjects that, just in our debriefing conversations.
Just keep snowballing.
Yeah, exactly. I opened up a can of worms.
Yeah. When you see a movie like Goodfellas, is it accurate?
95.9% accurate. I mean, we didn't have to none of it was embellished. In fact, if anything, it was toned down, because I mean, it was a violent way of life.
Ray Liotta.
Ray
played you?
Liotta, yeah. Ray Liotta did an
played
excellent
you?
job.
And
Wonderful.
Yep, you're
job.
happy and
Yeah.
spend any time with him?
Not before the movie. After the movie, I did. Marty Scorsese didn't want me to influence him in any way, but when the movie was finished, then we kind of became friends. You know, I was able to sit down and meet with him, and he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, great film. And how accurate was Casino?
I'd say about the same percentage, 95.5%. With Henry, he wasn't able to interact with them. They wanted me to interact with Frank Vincent, and I had to tell De Niro how Lefty was. I guess that Lefty Rosenthal was sort of a little resistant on making his appearance. He actually never made an appearance, so they needed me as an advisor on the movie. So I did spend 6 months on the set here in Las Vegas, you know, doing the movie with them. And Marty is a perfectionist. And as far as portraying, they have to change things around.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Violent scenes, whatever they are, they have to change them around to get it onto the screen, you know. The clothes, the lingo, like in one part Frank Vincent said something about, what do they call it? We call it merch, stolen merchandise. We say smirch. They call it swag in New York. Swag. So they say swag. I said, oh, wait a minute. I said, they don't say swag in Chicago. Or, excuse my French, they'll say jerk off. We say jag off. I said, no, you don't. So I had to be up there and I had to be correcting those guys and how they were dressing. And I said, sit next to Scorsese in the thing. And people couldn't figure out how I was sitting there. But because he depended on that for accuracy, you know.
Yeah.
Not because he liked me. He just wanted to get a true picture out there, you know.
Yeah. You were originally represented by Oscar Goodman.
That's correct.
Then he continued to represent Tony Spilotro, and you became persona non grata, and right?
Yeah, Oscar was, I had John Mamet as my lawyer, so we couldn't bump John Mamet off the case. It would have been like a slap in his face. So we used Oscar as a co-attorney, you know. In other words, he worked with Mamet. Of course, he gave him the orders. And Oscar, he did a good job. Now, Oscar and I don't get along, no, because...
Now you don't.
No, I mean, he don't hate me, I don't hate him,
But he made a big deal at the time, I recall, about
yeah,
you being
well,
a
he's
snitch.
defending his clients,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, he said there's no organized crime. Come on, he knew that, but what is he going to say? Yeah, Tony's a gangster? He can't say that. He's did the right thing. So in turn, I teased him. I said the guy's wearing a phony Rolex watch. And then his comeback was, the guy don't even know how to make a tie. I'm not, meaning me, right? The reason why I wear a phony watch is because he robbed me. But all in all, I think Oscar was a great mayor out there. I don't know about a lawyer, but I thought he was a great mayor while he was there.
And now with the Mob Museum, I mean, things seem that life has a funny way of coming around in circles.
Strange, yeah.
Yeah. I mentioned in the beginning of the show that not only do you get involved in writing books, but you also do some painting.
Yeah,
Right, we got a picture of something you painted up there somewhere, right?
Yeah, to me it's therapy. I do artwork, you know, and it's for sale on eBay, you know, mob art on eBay. But to me it's therapy. I mean, and it's all scenes from the movie, and it's, you know, it's very inexpensive, it's cute, you know, and it helps pay the bills.
So what is life like now? I mean, you from time to time you come to Las Vegas, you sit down and have dinners with groups of people that that pay to eat with you and talk to you, and both of you seem very open, very mellow.
Hey, life is great now. I mean, Henry will say that. You know, we don't have to look over our shoulder anymore for the cops are our friends. You know, I mean, it's pleasant. No more headaches. We get to communicate with legitimate people, and it's amazing how many people are interested in organized crime. We are able to convey a message to these people that it's not all that glamorous, you know. It has its good and bad, like anything else. If you look around at the legitimate white crime guys, they probably did more damage than we did to people, right?
Yeah.
We didn't go to people and say, take my money and I want so much back. They come to us begging for a loan, right?
Yeah.
And they both now speak to youth organizations, right?
Yeah.
The
I try to
detention,
work
the
with
juvenile
children.
detention center. Yeah.
I try to work with children as much as possible, and let them know that they can change their life. They're involved in that world, with gangs and all the nonsense that they get involved in, that they can change their life. And if I can reach one kid out of 100, my day is made, and that one kid could change the world.
The mob still around in this country?
Absolutely.
It's around, but I'm sure it's not as strong as at least from Chicago. I'm sure it's not as strong and organized as it used to be.
But it seems like now there's a Mexican mob, a Russian mob.
yeah,
They're
well,
more
they're
violent.
competition.
Are they more violent than
I think they were.
How
don't
you guys grew up?
These guys, these Chinamen and Mexicans, they kill everybody.
Pretty much so, yeah.
Yeah, it's tougher. And how about in Sicily and Italy? Still a pretty big mob presence, right?
Probably be
Absolutely.
always like that over there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wherever you get corruption, like Chicago, it's a corrupt city. And you can reach people, more so than I believe in New York. I mean, the whole city was corrupt.
Well, you can buy Senate seats there.
What?
You can buy a Senate seat in Chicago.
Anything you want over there,
2 books, Cullotta, which you can get, I'm sure, well, I was going to say in bookstores. Bookstore anymore. It's just Barnes & Noble or Amazon online. And also Gangsters and Goodfellas, Henry Hill. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Could have gone on and on. You got a lot of stories, but you can catch them from time to time. Go have dinner with them. They're interesting guests. We'll see you next week.